Thank you. Just one comment. I put a link on the home page for this class that allows you to email in, or helps you email in questions. So one thing that I would enjoy very much is if anybody wanted to send in questions during the week, and then we could discuss them during the first 20 minutes of the following class before we go into open discussion. And if I'm given anything during the week to talk about, I'll talk about that. I sort of like the format of talking about something, adding some letter of truth discussions at the beginning of the class. It'd be nice if we had something to talk about for 10 or 15 or 20 minutes worth of truth before we went into open discussion, but that's just me. So feel free to email in any questions that you would like, or topics that you would like to hear discussed during the coming weeks. And now the floor is wide open to anybody that would like to talk about anything.
Hi, this is Leah here.
Hey, Leah.
Hi, thank you. I do have a question, Lee. It relates to revealing consciousness and healing consciousness. How necessary is it to get the correct letter of truth versus just trying to get higher consciousness? Because I'm always thinking perhaps I need to get a correct letter of truth or certain truth statements. Or do I go more to God is? Could you elaborate on that using the correct letter of truth? Is there certain letters of truth that are more effective for certain appearances?
Yeah, that's interesting. A very good question. And Joel talks about it a little bit. The correct letter of truth is not the healing consciousness. The correct letter of truth is the device we use to ponder on and contemplate on and such like to raise ourselves to the level of, and the level we're raising ourselves to is the level of the awareness of the presence of God. And when we're aware of the presence of God, then God is in our experience because we're aware of it. And God is also, therefore, in the experience of whoever is hooked up with us by coming to us for help. And so when we're aware of the presence of God, now God is in our lives, whereas prior to our self-treatment it was not. And now that God is in our life, now God does the healing. Now that high level of consciousness does the dissolving of the appearance. So one would suggest that any device you can use to raise your altitude to the point where you're aware of the presence of God would be the right thing to do without any attention to it being the correct letter of truth with regard to a particular problem. But he does also talk about, he does talk about, you would start contemplating a different truth if the problem were supply than you would if the problem were health. He does give some examples of that, and I'm not sure why, except that what makes sense to me is that I can take any. So you call me with a problem of a fever, okay? And I think that any truth that I can use that would elevate me to the level where I have no concern at all about your fever would be the right one. I think if I can raise myself to the level that God is on the field, as Joel would say, or that I'm aware of the presence of God, then I would drop all concern about fever or any problem that you brought to me, and then the healing could take place. But my sense is that it doesn't matter what truth you're using as long as you get to the point where God is on the field, is here in consciousness, in my consciousness, and in the client's consciousness, and at work. And here again, we don't know what that's going to look like, because what God, we talked about omni-activity a while ago, and if God is present and the presence of God consciousness is here, then what's happening is God is going to reveal more of itself as fulfilled and harmonious and all those nice things, okay? But what that looks like, we don't know. Whether or not fulfilled and more harmonious looks like no fever, we don't know. So I think the point is that my understanding is that I need to elevate myself to the point where I'm aware of the presence of God and let God do whatever God is going to do. And as I've said before, though, sometimes I'm very aware of the presence of God, and I'm very aware that all is well, and my wrist still hurts. So that has to be part of omni-activity. The wrist hurting, still hurting, has got to be part of that. That this is, as I suggested earlier, that this is something that is driving me to intensify my work. Does that help or confuse?
No, that helps. It really does. And how much am I getting into the silence? Like something of the thunder of silence. Is that very highly elevated when I can really sense the silence, the thunder of silence?
Yeah. That's just a term he coined, of course, but to me, the thunder of silence just means, the very, I want to say the very loud presence of God, but loud sounds like thunder. The very strong presence of God, very intense awareness of God to me would be, if I'm feeling very intensely the presence of God, I would call that the thunder of silence.
Thank you.
Somebody else started up there right then too. Who was that?
Hi, it was Charlene. It is Charlene. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Charlene.
I really appreciate you taking the time this class to put out what you have, and I too appreciate your honesty and encouraging us to explore what this is for all of us. As you were talking, I was remembering some. I certainly didn't hear all the tape in detail that you mentioned for this morning, and I did listen to some of the tape that you recommended for this morning with Joel. And what I was really struck with was his word for with inertia.
Yes.
And how that applies to my life. And the other two phrases I heard distinctly were the universal belief.
Yes.
And I think it was in the context of what I related to Chubb, sort of saying
exactly.
That there is a eon of conditioning that we as humans have been conditioned, and he didn't say trapped within it, but that's how I imagined it, is that we are in this net of universal belief, and it's like trying to get out of a big lobster catch. You can't until you cut a hole. Yep. And then the infinite truth that we're heading for that. And the example that I had was Last night I was at an auction, and there was a trip that you could sail around Iceland as being the offer for the auction. And nobody began bidding on it. And I was sitting there and I thought, I'm not going to do this. I don't want to go into debt. I don't have the time for a trip. But my gosh, this is an amazing opportunity to have this opportunity to be in culture and with indigenous people and the whole thing. Anyway, no one bid for a good 10 to 15 minutes. It was just around $1,000 to $2,000. And I was so tempted to put my hand up. And of course they kept the bidding going until it went for a substantial amount eventually. But what I saw in myself was being caught in the net of, I don't want to go to debt, and yet here's infinite abundance being offered to me. And I could feel myself straddling on both sides, being in the world that God, He just keeps putting stuff in front of me. And I go to inertia by this thought process and feeling process of the Chubb kind of things. Not enough money, not enough time. It's not just involving me, it's our household resources. And I'm not the only person going, so there would be a second fee as well. So, I mean, I had all that rationalization and intellectualizing going on, and I was swinging from one aspect of infinite truth, and that there's just this abundance, and that universal belief that I still fall back, that just puts me into inertia.
Yeah.
I'm finding it hard to put it all together, but we've talked about temptations, and that these things are out to tempt us, and I don't know why. Like, I'm hearing you say, I'd like some answers. I believe there are answers, and they're revealing, and I don't know if there's a finite end. I've been going on this process feeling I'm working towards something. And Joel sort of said that this morning. He says, you can do this stuff for years and years, and you're still not going to, you might only raise up to a small level. Mm-hmm. And a little disheartening to hear that so blatantly. But on the other hand, I understood it, that this is a process. So when you say that you can see the end, I don't know if I can. I just feel I don't need to know if there's an answer. I just need to keep showing up. Well, anyway, that's what I have. I do like the classes where you begin with some piece of the principles of the truth and the infinite way, and I find that helpful to have some of that literature, some of that knowledge presented, and then open for discussion.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm not so sure I have a question, but I wouldn't mind you saying more about this universal belief and the lack and infinite truth and this inertia.
Well, yeah,
maybe it's not particular.
Yeah, I can say a little bit about it. Universal belief is just what they all believe, and what we're commenting on, and what they're broadcasting at us, through the media, and so strongly, and we're born into it. We're conditioned right from while we're still in the womb. We're already being conditioned to believe, and we believe we're material. We believe we have a material body. We believe this material body is me and that I'm in this body. And in spite of the fact that we know about that God is infinite and God is supply, we act as if it were possible for there to be not enough, as if we could have a lack. And that's the conditioning. The conditioning is the very strong human belief that the material story is real rather than the spiritual story, and that's true. And the inertia is just the weight of the inertia is just the weight of that belief. And that's what I think Anne was saying too, that now that because of media that's been so increased now, the inertia is, it's very difficult to believe that you're a spiritual being. And when everybody's talking about their bodies and taking care of their bodies and fixing their bodies and taking care of their bodies and talking about yours and on and on and on, it's very difficult to maintain your center. You have to be already very high to maintain your center of not being a material being. Yeah. Humanity is devoted to conditioning us to believing we're human and should take care of ourselves, And they make a lot of money on that. And that's why it's so strong right now. What did you have, Karen?
I'm sorry about that. I thought that was done. I apologize. I want to say thank you so very much for sharing that about you. I had a conversation with Anne at the beginning of this week that I was struggling with. I had to go to Charleston regarding my back. And 10 years ago, before I was even sober into this work, I handled the problem at the level of the problem, and I bought into having metal put in my back. Mm-hmm. And, everything has been going great, and especially since this work. And last year I was feeling so great I took up running, which is probably not the best thing, having something like that in my body, but nevertheless I felt good. But it happened to go to the surgeon this week. I really struggled with that, and I told Anne it's kind of the same thing that you were saying, that I felt like, where am I falling short? Like if I'm listening to the Joel and I'm doing the meditations and I'm in those classes, and am I not doing it right because I'm feeling some discomfort and going to a doctor? Like I wasn't getting it right, and what was I doing wrong?
Yeah, I hear that. And all I can say on that is for myself, is and I'm going to go see a doctor tomorrow and get a device implanted in my wrist. It's not a personal failing. I have unquestionably been always doing the very best I can, and I'm doing as much work as I can. And he also said very clearly this morning that on that audio that you can't just increase the amount of work you're doing. Your capacity for doing more work isn't there yet. So, so my answer is, that I'm not. I haven't sufficiently deeply enough realized yet that whatever I need to realize in order not to have these appearances. But the other thing I keep in mind is that this doctor I'm going to, I don't get sucked into the doctor consciousness. I'm going to the doctor and looking at the doctor as part of omni activity. This is this doctor is also an expression of God and is involved in the revelation, is involved in my revelation of deeper truth. So I can look at the doctor as a material dude, fixing my wrist, or I can look at him as part of the process of gaining, resolving the pain and allowing me to go deeper and deeper into this work. So in one case, I'm caught into the hospital doctor frame of mind, but the way I choose to look at it is that this is God bringing a solution to my problem to me, and I'm just not high enough to be able to realize it without still the appearance of some external device doing it. When supply comes to us, it all comes to us some way. Comes through the mail or something. And when relief for my wrist problem comes to us, it's going to come through a doctor this time rather than through a miraculous healing, since I don't seem to have a practitioner available that can lift me high enough. It's all God. It's all God.
Well, I thank you for sharing that, because, I have not been in the work that long, but for me, being in the truth and in this work, I do see it. I see it with the 12-year-old in the other room.
Yes.
When he first came to my life, was on ADHD medicine and could barely go to school, and that is now going on camping trips and takes nothing. And and with a broken leg, the fruitage from that and everything that's been brought to this town and the different things that have spread out from, the dead bee and the appearance of a broken leg, I know that the path is the right one that I'm on.
Yeah, I do too. And I certainly sometimes demonstrate impatience. But that's personal sense. God is not impatient. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Lee, this is Anya.
Hi, Anya.
Hi, Lee. Good to be here.
I think so too.
And I appreciate you just sharing kind of where you are with this process, and have felt my own frustration along the way over the last couple of years. I was working very closely with a very high healer when my cancer got diagnosed, and as you well know, and at the time there were two things going on for me. On the one hand, I was aware of the presence of total peace and a sense of just observing what was happening. Lon and I were sitting in the office of the surgeon before I sort of had the official diagnosis, and he's telling me, I want you to have surgery day after tomorrow. We need to do this right away. And Lon and I, he left the room to see what the schedule was, and Lon and I sat there, we kind of looked at each other, and we're like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
And so I do think that I was lifted to a place where I wasn't needing to go in. I didn't go into a lot of script. I don't recall going into any script at that point, and felt amazing after the surgery, and who knows what, maybe it would have spread if I hadn't been working with that practitioner. I just don't know, but I do know that throughout the whole process, I felt more aware of presence than probably almost any time in my life.
Yeah.
So despite the appearance of what seemed to be going on, I was feeling completely held.
Yep.
And and I also had this very clear sense that this will sound weird, but like I had been somehow going in the wrong direction, and that this very loud appearance helped to put me back on the path. And also, with Alon's ongoing physical challenges or appearance of physical stuff, we continue to just work it. He was working knowing truth on a daily basis.
Sure.
It's just so. Yeah, I'm just sort of more sharing my experience and of kind of dealing with the appearance of the revealing of health. And I'm also always caught in this place of the carrot, even in Joel's Joel's classes, the carrot is the appearance of health. Like that, there's always this sort of carrot, like, oh, if you do all this work, you're going to have perfect health. This is my interpretation of it. And yet you can't go for the carrot. Or if you go for the carrot, then you're totally off the beam.
Yep.
So there's this tricky thing of being sort of almost seduced into wanting to do work, but then you have to drop all of the attachment to this body, this appearance, this life, and only then go for what the real revealing is, which is the experience, my greater sense of truth and revealing of the experience of the presence of God, and that's the only true revealing. So I'm always wrestling with that.
Yeah,
wanting the carrot, but I have to totally drop the carrot.
Well, that's one of the things that I've been getting so much during the last month or two. That we need to reteach this whole thing, because the language that Joel uses and religions use is the language of carrots, and it's all wrong, but it does keep dangling the carrot out. I mean, you definitely get the idea that if I get high enough, all my physical discords will disappear, and supply will happen, and all this sort of stuff, and the fact that I'm interested in that shows that I'm still in my humanhood. So it's always, that's one of the conflicts that I'm trying to resolve right now, is that the teaching is always wrong, in that it's always talking about material stuff. When, of course, you can't teach without talking about material stuff, but it's always talking about, the fact that he called it spiritual healing is ridiculous. There's nothing to heal. And he says that. He says very clearly and succinctly, there is nothing to heal. And yet, the other 90% of the time, he talks about spiritual healing. So there's a real conflict there, because he's forced to talk about things at the level that the people can hear him. So
sure.
It's a real problem, and that's part of the hypnosis. That's part of Chubb. The carrot is part of Chubb.
Absolutely. You have to completely drop it.
Yeah.
And yet, that's part of what initially got me interested in spiritual teaching.
Yeah.
But it's a tricky one for me.
It is. That's why I really delight in those moments of extreme well-being, of complete knowledge and feeling and everything of of my total well-beingness, and my wrist hurts, it's just a great place to sit and not have a belief about it or anything at all, that's what it looks like. And if I want the wrist to stop hurting, then I'm not diving into the well-beingness, and I'm believing that the wrist is part of my real body, and it's not, that's the illusion, that's the dreams. And the well-beingness that I'm experiencing, this is who I am, not that wrist over there. So that too is part of the device of growing, so I don't mind that, but it certainly does bring the problem right to the center.
Yes, it does. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll just say one last thing that comes to mind is that the brighter or higher one's consciousness gets, the more the dark spots are revealed as well, is what was also shared with me while I was going through my cancer treatment. Yeah. So, every teacher I know is going through something.
The brighter the light, the blacker the shadows. For sure.
Right, exactly.
No question about that.
Yeah.
And the shadows can be removed. By shining a light on the place where the shadow is, the shadow can be removed. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's all about, is getting the additional light. Directing light to where the shadow is, and my wrist clearly is a shadow, and I'm needing more light. So, okay.
Yes, and I'll also just agree with Anne that this. I'm not surprised that there aren't more people on this call for this particular topic, because it is a challenging one, and I've been doing this, I've been working with you for 22, 23 years, and I couldn't be on these kinds of classes for many, many years.
Yeah, I know.
So, yeah.
You'd think we'd have this shit figured out by now, wouldn't you?
You think, but
no,
it doesn't really matter anyway, right?
It's just deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and Ken Lasdowski told us, that the reason we don't have a deeper understanding is we're not yet prepared for it. So the reason things don't happen instantaneously is that the necessary preparation for them isn't in place yet. So we're preparing.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, this is Kate.
Hey, Kate.
Hey, I'm so glad that the class is going to be continuing, because, like Ann, when I heard that this might be it, I wilted.
We have to find a way that the community can continue to be served and benefit and grow. That's all.
Excellent.
Because the community, part of the reason for the class to begin with was to reiterate the principles of the infinite way, but part of the reason for the class was to reopen the community, to reestablish our community ties so that we can have, support groups and feel supported whether we're talking to each other or not, know that there's a bunch of us out here. So the community is still very important to me.
Excellent, and it is to me too. more than I think. I would like to suggest that perhaps we just shuffle the Barbara Mull flashcards and just take one a week and see what comes of it.
Or make up our own.
Well, yeah, because Yeah, there's a bunch of questions that I have, and the most pressing one right now is when, I don't know which tape it was or when it was that I heard it, but he was talking about when the case comes to him, he immediately drops the person, drops the claim, and the truth that he ponders is as far from the claim as he can. I don't think it's a conscious thing, but he'll, like if it's a problem with somebody has a problem with their ear, he'll say, my kingdom is not of this world, or he was saying that he'll say something like so completely off of the specific topic,
right,
as he can get.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
so I guess
he certainly can't do anything about ears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he keeps saying that he knows nothing about materia medica. Yeah, and it is a dicey thing because I'm really not convinced there's anything safe to do with the human mind except just keep saying malpractice over and over again and know the truth and meditate. And maybe make a grocery list and do some math. But, I find that I could just say chup, chup, chup all day with all of the appearances that are external to me and all of the appearances that are internal to me. And, it just seems never, ever ending.
Well, I'm sure it is, but the situation is always, the experience is always improving.
Yeah.
Eventually, there will be no conditioning, and still will not be nearly at altitude. Although we may get high enough that we don't need a physical body anymore, but there's still, an infinite way to go.
Yeah. That's heartening to say that we'll be that at a certain point we won't be conditioned anymore.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
As soon as you stop believing in materiality, all your conditioning will break down.
That's beautiful.
But now let's say you stop believing in materiality, and here comes the inertia and the huge weight of Chubb.
Yeah, and my belief in eating, and then there's kind of there's exceptions for eating and breathing, and you're not supposed to test it, and so it's I get confused about it at times.
Yeah,
a lot of times.
Sure, we all do.
Yeah, but then, pardon?
We all do, and we just do the best we can. I mean, you have to go within and find out where to draw the line. And then go within 2 days later and draw it in a different place.
Yeah. Usually when I get myself into a cul-de-sac of thought, then I just remember to play hot potato, with the thought, and just do my best to like you were talking about, the Bhagwan, they would have this intense music playing, and then suddenly they'd say stop, and everybody would stop, and there'd be stillness.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes when I get myself wound up, I can just say, stop!
Yeah.
And for a moment, there's stillness.
Yep. And in that moment, there's God.
Yeah, thank you so much. I don't know if there was a question in there, but I really appreciate us getting together, and glad we're going to continue.
Yeah, let's do it. But send questions. Let's find something to talk about.
All right, thanks.
Hey, Lee, on that note, I always find that I don't have as much time to go through the whole audio every day, and we have a new one every day. It would be lovely to have one audio that we listen to for the whole week as one possibility.
I hear you. That certainly wouldn't work for me. I guess what I'm getting is it's not the. It doesn't matter that you don't hear the whole audio every day. If you hear some of it deeply, that would be fine. If you hear one thing deeply every day, that would be fine. You don't need to hear the whole audio every day. I do it.
Got it.
I do it and spend all that time at it because that's my favorite thing to do. Those hours in the morning when I'm doing that and getting feedback and stuff like that are very very blissful moments. So that's my favorite time in the day is that first block of time that I spend listening to that audio. So, but nobody says you have to hear the whole thing or hear any of it, but there it is and it's available and you can go back and listen to stuff if you want to or do whatever you want to. But I think if you heard 10 or 15 minutes of it deeply, that would be great.
Will do. Thank you.
Well, all right then. I guess that must be it. Last chance. Okay. Thank you all very much, and I love you all very much, and we'll see what happens next week. Have a lovely week.
Thanks, Lee.
You bet. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. I love you.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.